Hi, David from PDI. This video is about localization and localization for marketing, and particularly how that applies to promotional products and branded merchandise. For most marketers, localization means having the brochure translated into Spanish, Italian, or whatever. But as my friends from Smartling, I'll put a link in the show notes, will point out, it's not just the language, but also the sentiment, seasonal trends, cultural preferences within that language. So translation is quite a large topic in itself, and one best dealt with by the experts. But it's not just language for localization. Think colour. If you said the colour red to someone from Western Europe, they'd be thinking red associated with love, think a red heart, possibly danger, think of the traffic light. But the colour red in the Far East is lucky. So China, Vietnam, and that part of the world would see a bright red as being a very lucky colour. In Southern Africa, however, the colour red is associated with death and mourning. Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise. We always associate black with death and mourning in Western Europe. Actually, in the Far East, they associate the colour white with it. So why do I mention this? You can get yourself into trouble, not particularly with those colours, but think of the colour orange. Now in Holland, orange is a great colour. It's associated with the national pride, the king, and is a wonderful colour. But be careful if you create an orange water bottle and send it to someone in Ireland. Now in Ireland, particularly the Republic, the colour orange is associated with the Unionists, Protestant Unionists, and may or may not be well received. So that's colour. Another subject to consider is brands. It's very common for people in promotional merchandise to want to associate their brand with another big brand, and that's great. I have no problems with that. But you need to understand that some brands don't translate. For example, we had quite a large order for Timbuktu backpacks. This is a very popular brand, really on trend in America. However, in Western Europe, they've never heard of it. So why is that a problem? It's not a problem as such, but it did mean that the client was trying to spend 80, 90, nearly £100 on a backpack because of the brand, which nobody had heard of. And it's not just Timbuktu. We've had cases with a thing called the Awala water bottle, Awala water bottles. Again, it's just a brand that's not known. So if you're spending money on that brand, then do ensure that the locale that you're sending it to actually recognize it. Otherwise, it's not that you're doing any harm, but you're just wasting money. Thinking of products, we also have instances where the product choice was not great. Particularly, we did a very large order for fleeces, and they were lovely fleeces. They were dual lined, really heavy weight, really kept you warm, and we did quite a lot of them. But we were also asked to send to Mumbai. Anybody who knows Mumbai will know that during the summer, when it's 42 degrees centigrade outside, the only time you're going to use a fleece is if you're in a restaurant where they've turned the air conditioning up too high. A lovely product, but a lot of money spent when a polo shirt would have probably gone down a lot better. Finally, the other thing to think about is not just the negatives, but the positives. I mentioned Orange and Holland, and that's because they have a thing called King's Day where they celebrate it. And so instead of avoiding such things, you can lean into the fact that for the Dutch, the King's Day is a big deal. Similarly, in France, Bastille Day, not important to anybody else, but to the French, it is really a big deal. Religious holidays. Don't have an issue with religious holidays. I think the Americans have probably got it quite right in that they call them the holidays rather than using Christmas so as not to offend anybody. But please, across Western Europe, Christmas is a great term to use. And it's not just within Western Europe. I receive season's greetings, Christmas greetings from my friends in India because they don't have a problem with recognizing Christmas, but they do like it when you recognize Diwali. Understanding those cultural differences is really quite important. Are PDI experts on this? No. We do ship all across the world, and I personally would consider myself quite well travelled, but I tell you where the expert is. The expert is the person who's living in the country who can give you feedback. And it might mean that not only is your product better received, but you won't be wasting money on products which could cause you a problem. Thank you.